Welcome. So this is your NCERT course. I'll be taking your science and technology. Now let's get started. There are a lot of NCERT books of science. Okay, it is almost equivalent to the entire social sciences. Now, first thing. So this is class 6 NCERT that we'll be starting it from. So you can see this cover, curiosity. Okay, hopefully you also have this word, that is curiosity. Now the thing is that book is very cheap. If you want to buy, this is like I think 65 rupees. So if you want to buy, you can buy, but otherwise I am covering the entire book for you. Okay, then first chapter first chapter is fairly just very simply telling you about, like, it is introducing a child to world of science. Okay, so mainly for us there are only two things that we need to understand. One is that what is science. So science is a way of thinking, observing and doing things to understand the world we live in. Science is simply this, that is understanding the all the phenomena, everything that is happening around you in the world, understanding them, the natural phenomena. Okay, that is science. For example, in physics, what you are understanding, you're trying to understand how the universe is working. Correct? Why something, when I drop it, falls. Correct? This is gravitation. So these are some things that we as humans have observed, and then we are trying to understand why such a thing happens. Correct? This is not something that we are that is completely man made. For example, the economy, the polity that you read and study, those are completely man made concepts. Correct? Science is not. Science is understanding everything that is happening around you. Okay, and why such a thing happens. Understood? Now, then the NCERT beautifully talks about something known as scientific method. So basically it tells you that if let's say your pencil is breaking continuously, or your pen is not working properly, then what you do, you first take out the refill of it and you see if the refill is filled or empty. Now if it is empty, then you know you have to replace the refill. If it is not, then you do what? Then you think that there might be some kind of distance or obstruction created. Correct? So you shake your pen like this and then hope that it starts writing. Correct? Otherwise, if that also does not work, you start looking at the nib. Now what you are doing essentially is what scientific method is, and that is following a step by step process that helps us deduce answers to our questions. What was our question? That why is my pen not working? And how I went about it, I saw the refill, and then I saw that if there is some breakage, and then I saw the nib. So all this is a step by step process that we are taking to get to our answers. This is scientific method. Okay, this chapter for us, we have only this. Then let's get to chapter 2. Now this, from here they mainly start with the main chapters. The chapter name is diversity in the living world. Okay, now if I talk about living world, this you might know that what is living. Living is something that can do most of the biological processes. For example, respiration. Correct? Taking in some form of air. Okay, then digestion, then reproduction. All these basic properties, if is done by something, we call it living. Otherwise we call it non-living. So here we are studying about the world of living. Now first thing, it can be divided into two major sections, that is plants and animals. Now in plants, if you look at, so it talks about different kinds of plants and it gives one to two examples of it. Now see, so first is trees. Trees, correct? Hard, thick stem, branches start higher. If you have seen trees, it will look something like this. Now the branches start. Correct? Correct? So branches start much later from the ground. Correct? And the wood, or that you see the stem here, is hard and thick. Correct? It's hard and thick. Now example of this, what is an example? Any you can take. Now because it is summers, Let me take an example of mango. Then next is shrubs. Now shrubs are what? They are hard but not as thick. Branching starts from the ground. Now example of this is actually rose. If you have seen rose plant, the stems are not that thick, but they are still woody. Correct? They are wood-like. That is brown color stem you must have seen. Correct? Now, branching actually starts in rose right from the bottom, and this is what you call as shrubs. Then after this, you come to something known as herbs. Herbs have soft and green stem. This you might have seen in something that looks red, that is tomato. So tomato is an example of herb. How can you say that? If you have seen tomato growing on some field, you might have seen the stems are so soft that when there is a large tomato that comes on it as a fruit, then what happens? It just starts moving towards that fruit. Okay, it starts losing its shape. Why? Because the stems are soft and green. Then climbers. So climbers, if you talk about, have you seen grapes? Grape vines you must have seen. So they create an entire structure over which it can climb. You might have seen money plant also in your home, correct? So it climbs over anything that it can get hands to. Then here example you can write as grapes, let's say. Then climbers are what? Which need support to climb over and grow. Correct? Now, there is something known as creepers also. What are creepers? So they creep along the ground. Okay, this is not the creep that we usually say in the normal world. This is something that goes along the ground. This you might have seen, especially the fruits of which are very large in size. Now that is very difficult to be carried by, for example, climbers or herbs or even shrubs. For example, pumpkin. Just think, to carry pumpkin, it will require so much. Like if I have to carry pumpkin in a tree, let's say, then the tree must have branches that are this big. Then only it will be able to hold that big piece of pumpkin above the ground. Correct? So that is actually not possible. So by adaptation only, such varieties grow as creepers. That is, they will grow very close to the ground, and their fruits will be lying on the ground itself. Example of this are, of course, pumpkin. Also beetle god. Okay, god you might have heard, Loki. Okay, so those are also creepers. So these are the basic classification of plants, that is trees, shrubs, herbs, climbers and creepers. Understood? Now let's come to animals. For animals, let me remove this very bad drawing of a tree. Now animals, the animal classification is actually much more detailed. Okay, so that will be dealt in higher classes, not higher classes for you. So basically in 7th, 8th, 9th, they will be dealing with the real classification of animals. Here they are just introducing the concept. So they just talk about that there are terrestrial, aquatic, amphibians and aerial. This is the classification of animals. Now this is actually based on a concept called habitat. What is habitat? Habitat is the place where they live. So any organism, any animal in this specific context, wherever they live and from which they get all the air, water, nutrients, food, everything they get from the place they are living around, that is called habitat. Understood? So where they live. Now examples you can understand. Terrestrial means what? Terrestrial means which lives on the ground. Correct? Then example of terrestrial, I am a terrestrial animal. Then aquatic. Okay, aquatic is which lives on water, or lives in water. For example, fishes and all. Then amphibians. What are amphibians? Which can live both on land and water. Example of this is amphibian example. Frog, you might have heard. There are many snakes. Correct? Those are amphibians. Then aerial. Aerial means which can fly. Correct? Which remains in the air for large parts. Example of this is pigeon or whatever bird you like. So this is the basic classification of animals. The classification of animals based on phylum and all that we'll see in later classes. Then next is grouping of plants. Now see, so basically they talk about three things in a plant. First is root. Okay, as you can see, tap and fibrous. These are two kinds of roots. Now see here. So if you see here, tap root goes like this. So basically, there is a middle part of the root, that is the main part, and from this you have branches like this. This is an example of tap root. As you can see here, there is a middle like this and then there are branches. Okay, then now other than this, there is something else that is known as fibrous root system. Now in fibrous root system, what you have, basically if this is ground, then in all direction you just start having roots like this. There is no singular stem that you had here from which all other root hairs were coming out. This is an example of taproot and this is an example of fibrous root. Understood? Now, where have you seen taproot? If you have taken out, for example, if you have taken out pea plant or chana, chickpea, then you might have seen some structure like this. Now, if you have taken out grass, this I hope most people have taken out grass, the simple grass that you find everywhere. If you take it out, the roots they don't have a single stem that goes deep, correct? It is just fibrous or similar root that is scattered all around. That is actually fibrous root. Understood? Now, so this is the first way in which we differentiate plants or group plants, that is taproot system or fibrous root system. Then next is venation. Okay, that is, if you see the leaves, now leaves have patterns, correct? Different leaves you might have seen have beautiful patterns. In NCERT, they also talk about that you can keep these leaves and see the venation pattern under some form of light, or if you keep these leaves, which sometimes leaves color, and you keep them between two pages, you will find the venation pattern, correct, on the page. Now, so this is venation. Now, there are two types again, reticulate and parallel. Reticulate is what we usually draw when we are making drawings and all. Okay, so reticulate is like this. This is reticulate pattern. Okay, now this you find in most of the plants. For example, you might have seen rose leaves. Rose leaves also look like this. Or hibiscus. Hibiscus is gudhal, or what you might have seen as red flower, correct? A stamen coming out of it and yellow pollen grains over it. That is hibiscus. Now, the opposite of this is actually parallel venation pattern. This you must have seen on banana leaf. Okay, most of us have eaten on banana leaves, correct? So this you can very clearly see that they have a parallel pattern of venation like this. Understood? Then next is based on cotyledons. Now, cotyledons, or this is very specific to flowering plants. Okay, flowering plants usually have cotyledons. Now, this can be divided as dicot and monocot. Understand the term. So, cotyledon, basically you take a, let's say, chana or chickpea. Okay, chickpea you take brown color, and what you do, you just try to break it from the middle. It becomes two equal parts, correct? It does become two equal parts. Similarly for pea also you can do this. So now what is that? That is an example of dicot. Dicot can be broken into two pieces like this, which are equal in size. Okay, so this is dicot seeds example. You can see chickpea. Now monocot is what? So monocot cannot be broken into two equal parts. For example, maize or corn you must have seen. Okay, corn you might have seen. Now corn, if you take, this is like a single piece, correct? Now does it break into two equal parts? No, it does not, correct? Similarly, wheat also does not. So all those are actually monocots. Understood all the three terms? That is root system, venation system, cotyledons. The variety is tap fibrous, reticulate parallel or dicot monocots. Now, how do you remember one connection? So the connection is this. Whatever I have written first, those are actually connected. So if you see here, tap root system will have reticulate leaf pattern and will be dicot. Okay, example, this is now see this plant. From this plant you will understand everything. Now if you see, like this plant, it has taproot system, correct? Now the leaves, if you see, can you see the leaves is reticulate in pattern, correct? It is like this, correct? So it has reticulate leaves also. So this is done. And if you see, if you, the fruits have not come right now, okay, but if you let it grow, the fruits or the seed that comes out will be dicot in nature. Understood? So this is how it works. How do you remember this? So you remember it like tired or TRD. Okay, so TRD you can remember, that is tap root will have reticulate venation and will be dicot. And the opposite of this will be FPM. But FPM you need not remember. Tired or TRD you can remember. Okay, so TRD, if you remember, the opposite will be for fibrous, then parallel, then monocot. This relation is very clearly given in NCERT. Okay, then there was a table that ideally a class 6 student or you should have filled, but okay, so I have filled it here. I have also entered one more column here. Now this is the name of the plants that is given there, okay, and in different parts of the chapter. Now those only I have filled, okay, otherwise there are many monocots, dicots, but if UPSC wants to give a question, they will focus on what is given in the NCERT. So those only I have taken. Now if you look here, so there is lemongrass. So from grass you understand, this is like, so one thing you need to know, if you know one of them, then you can guess two of them, correct? So now you see lemongrass, so you immediately understand grass means fibrous. Once you know fibrous, you know what fibrous is always parallel in venation and it will be a monocot. Understood? Then if you go for wheat, so wheat, if you go, so wheat is again, what do you know about wheat? You have seen wheat, correct? So wheat, you do know that it is a monocot. It is not getting divided into two equal pieces like this, correct? So it is a monocot, then you know that this will be fibrous and parallel. Understood? This is how you have to decipher. Then mustard example we have already seen. This is mustard plant only, correct? So it is actually TRD system or tired system. So mustard is reticulate, tap and dicot. At least because it is given in NCERT, I hope you remember tap, and from that you can guess others. Hibiscus is that flower that I told you about. So hibiscus is given for reticulate pattern of leaves. From this you can guess tap and dicot. Similarly, Sadabahar flower you might have seen, pinkish color, okay, 5 small petals are there. That is Sadabahar, okay. Now that is a flower, again reticulate, tap and dicot. Next is chickpea we anyway understand that this is definitely a dicot, correct? Because it is dicot, it will be reticulate and tap also. Simple. So only you have to remember this TRD and you can also fill that table. Then next is grouping of animals. So now if you grouping of animals, again as I told you, that will be dealt in higher classes. Here the grouping is again very easy. So fish lives in water, and how does it move? Using its fins. Then pigeon flies in the air using what? Wings. Then goat walks on land using her legs. So this is the very simple way they have defined a grouping of animals as of now. Then they have talked about adaptations. Adaptations not in detail as we do in UPSC, but more in the more on the lines of these. So now the adaptations that are given here, that becomes more important to us. Okay, they have a tendency to ask those adaptations which are there in some NCERT, either in science or in NCERTs for social sciences and others also. There is some chapters of environment. So from there, now you see here cactus. Where does cactus grow? Cactus grows in the desert, correct? Now, can you see that it has thick and fleshy stems in the desert? Why it has thick and fleshy stems? So that the loss of water is very minimal and it is able to store water in those waxy stems. So one is it stores water. So one is store water, and you might also see that there are no proper leaves. Instead, there are spine like system here, correct? So instead of leaves they have this, so as to reduce water loss. So water loss is minimal. Understood? This you get. Then they talk about deodar. Deodar is some plant that is grown in higher mountains, especially Himalayas. Okay, now if you see the structure, it is conical in shape like this. Can you see this? This is conical in shape. Why? So that if there is snow or anything, it just falls down and it does not get stacked over it. Otherwise, the branches will start breaking. So this is deodar. Then that is why the leaves also are not that wide for deodar. It is very thin. So it has thin leaves also. So it has thin leaves and it has this triangular shape. Understood? Then it talks about camels. So it talks about Thar and Ladakh camels. Now if you see the Thar camel here, hooves and all is fine. The main thing is the legs are very tall for the Thar camel. While if you see the legs here, there are short legs for this camel in Ladakh. Why is it so? Because it has to travel on sand. So constantly his feet might be going inside sand. Now if the feet is too small, he will get stuck. That's why it has very long legs. Now, if you see here, the camels usually have humps. Correct? These humps are actually used for storage. Now, they live in areas like deserts where there is not constant availability of food. Okay, so that is why they start storing it here. Now, if you see a camel, for example, a Ladakh camel after cold winters, because in cold winters it is usually not able to get any food, then you will see that this hump has shrunk. Why? Because whatever fat was stored, it used it to get energy and to survive. Correct? And now one more thing you can see, because it is living in the desert, that's why the skin of the camel is very thin. So it has thin skin. While if you look here, what you can see, he has a lot of fur. Why? Because it has to survive in the cold. Correct? So these are the adaptations. Then it also talks about rhododendrons. So it talks about that rhododendrons, this is an example of a flowering plant, beautiful flowers you can see here. Now it said that rhododendrons grow in hilly areas, but the rhododendrons of Nilgiris are very different from that of Uttarakhand because the altitude is different. So that is why they change certain things. For example, the length of, after how much length they will start flowering. So all those things are changed for the same species also, for the same exact same plant also, based on where it is grown. This was the whole point they wanted to put. Then it talks about some very simple things. For example, there is something called sacred groves. This is given in those boxes. So sacred groves are what? They are undisturbed patches of land protected by community. no government protection, no national park, nothing. So this is some parts of the forest that are considered religiously, or you can say culturally, very important to a community. So they protect it. They do not allow it to be destroyed. Very famously, there are a lot of secret groves in the northeast. And it also talks about, in NCERT they have given photo from Western Ghats. So these are not owned by government or a single entity also. These are usually community owned patches of land that has to be left undisturbed. They won't allow any disturbance to it. Then Bengal tiger, cheetah and great Indian bustard, it talks about these three animals that their numbers are declining or have become too low. And it talks about that government has come up with different plans to save them. For example, for this they had the program which was trying to, so you might have heard of Project Tiger, that was launched in the 1972. Then cheetah, a very recent is, this also is mentioned because this is new NCERT, that is cheetah reintroduction. Cheetah reintroduction project. This was inaugurated in 2022. Correct. Then there is also Great Indian Bustard Conservation Project that is going on from a very long time, especially because this is mainly in the regions of Rajasthan, Gujarat and Maharashtra. These are the three states where Great Indian Bustards is largely located. What is this? This is a very special bird. Okay, now this bird is actually dying, okay, because of all the lines of electric lines and everything that is there in these three states. So they are not able to navigate and they are dying. The Supreme Court has also taken many steps to protect this. Right now we have Great Indian Bustard Conservation Project. Then last two things, just in miscellaneous. So they have given know a scientist in almost every chapter. These two names were mentioned. First is Janki Ammal. Now, what is her contribution? So she was an Indian botanist. Okay, so what she did, of course, if she was a botanist, then she would try to dedicate her life to protect environment and all. Now, what her major role is in Save Silent Valley movement. This also is a box in NCERT. Save Silent Valley movement. Now, so this was a movement that was led by her, and the main reason was Palakkad district of Kerala, and this is actually against a hydro power project. Can you guess which river? Huh? If you have been to Kerala or if you are from Kerala, can you guess? Yes. So this is actually on. This was actually planned to be built on Kontipuzha river. Okay, so this was the plan, and of course it would have affected the environment around it, and Silent Valley was the region where this was happening, and then she and many other, of course the community, opposed it and they stopped this. They struggled for almost a decade to get this hydropower project cancelled, and this is her role. Okay, then as the head of Botanical Survey of India, she initiated programs to document plant diversity of India. So what you have to remember, Janki Ammal related to Save Silent Valley project, Save Silent Valley movement, what was in the movement, and then what she was a botanist, or you can just remember that she was head of Botanical Survey of India. From this only you can understand she was a botanist. Then last is this, which is Salim Ali. Now Salim Ali National Park, Salim Ali Bird Sanctuary, this is all around India, correct? Very famous guy. Now what he has done, so see, so Salim Ali traveled across India to observe the diversity in birds. Then he prepared a list of birds and documented their travel routes and habitats. So basically for these birds, he got the travel routes and habitats. Then he recorded regions where there are high bird diversity which should be conserved and all that. Then he talked about, or he mainly worked for two places. One is Kyola Deo National Park in Bharatpur. Okay, you also might have heard of Bharatpur Bird Sanctuary, and the other is Ragannathittu. Okay, I don't know the pronunciation, you would know better. Bird Sanctuary in Mandya, Karnataka. Okay, so these are the two of his main contributions. He tried to conserve these areas for the birds. Then, of course, he is also called the Birdman of India, and he got Padma Vibhushan in 1976. This is Salim Ali. Okay, so this is it for your chapter 1 and 2 and your introduction to NCERT course. Hope you liked it, and we'll meet you again for the next chapters. That's it.